Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of the Reddest podcast. I'm your host, Sean Martin. This is the last story that we have this season from my audio story series, which were written stories that I compiled about experiences of mine all over the world and published on my website, while also doing an audio version of it that you can listen to as you read along. The podcast episodes are a little bit longer and they have a little bit more detail and explanation about what happened in these stories. So if you like, head over to thereddestbeard.com and follow along with the stories while you listen to these. This week's episode talks about a crazy taxi ride I had in China with a surprising twist at the end. First though, I'm going to take a moment to shout out to my sponsor. Remember, now every time I get played, I get paid. So go through, listen to the episodes, like them, share them around, and I'll be right back after this word about my sponsor, and I'll tell you all about the drunk taxi. All right, so as many of you probably know, or at least have figured out at this point, in 2015, I moved to China to teach for a year. I actually wound up staying for 2. But when I got there, I was a complete stranger in a completely strange land. I didn't know anything about Chinese. I didn't even know that ni hao meant hello before I moved there. It was insane. And if you want to learn more about what led up to it, go check out the episode called How to Get Your Friend to Move to the Other Side of the World with You. But now this story takes place when I'm actually living in China. I'm in a city called Guiyang in Guizhou province. Have you ever heard of it? That's what I thought. Most people haven't. Guiyang is a small Chinese city of only about 6 million people, which is larger than, I'd say, 90% of cities in the US, but in China it's considered a pretty small city. It's in a region that is very mountainous, very rural. Historically, it has been a very poor province. I kind of liken it to like the Chinese version of West Virginia. Great people, rich culture, a drawl in the local dialect, and it even had a coal-based mining economy up until the 90s, right? So this was the setting that I moved into. I wasn't in a big capital city like Beijing or a big financial hub like Shanghai or Hong Kong. I was in a huge Chinese city that wasn't really on the map, especially not for foreigners at the time that I moved there. So this story takes place in that city when my friend Nick and we had moved there and we were living there a few months in. We'd gotten to know some new people. We'd made some friends. We were getting used to the culture. And one of the things that we had figured out was that to get around, you could take black taxis, illegal taxis, right? If you just stepped off the curb and waved your hand, a car might pull over and you would just tell them where you wanted to go. And they would tell you, 10 kwai, 20 kwai, which is slang for the RMB, the currency, right? So they would just be like, oh, 15 kwai qian, right? 15 kwai, it'll get you over there. And then you could just get in that car, or you could wait for an actual metered taxi. Now, there are thousands of metered taxis in this city, but it's a city of 6 million people. And at the time that we were there, they didn't have a subway. They were just starting to build it. So black taxis were a very common form of transportation. Now, you never knew what you were going to get with a black taxi driver. Sometimes you would get somebody who would try to rip you off. Sometimes you would get somebody who would give you a free ride just because they wanted to practice their English. So that's the setting of this specific story when Nick and I decided to go out and meet our friends on a popular bar street called Qianling Donglu. One final note. The dialogue that I've included in this story are rough translations of the Chinese exchanges that would happen. Now, at this point, remember, I had moved there and I didn't even know that ni hao meant hello, right? So the Chinese that I was picking up at this point was all street dialect slang and was based on conversations with shop owners and taxi drivers, right? I was learning the numbers based on how much I had to pay when I went and bought a bottle of water. So the intent is here, and it's correct and true, though the exact translation of what they might have said from the Chinese is a little bit different because Chinese and English are very different languages. So the dialogue here is as true a representation of what I can give you since I'm not going to be using the Chinese that Nick and I used, especially because if anybody out there is listening to this and speaks Chinese, I don't want them to hate me when they hear me attempt to speak it. All right, so keep that in mind. And here's the story of the drunk taxi. Yeah, man, just flag down any black cab. I don't want to stand out here all night, and you know these fuckers are just going to slow to a roll and stare at us instead of picking us up. That was my roommate, Nick. We're headed out to meet our friends at a local Western hotspot. It's got a bar stocked with booze that at least mimics Western spirits instead of just the normal Chinese brands of baijiu or white spirits that are so popular here. There's a pool table, a menu with Western foods like quesadillas or hamburgers, and the owners let us use the iPad to choose our own music. The flood of foreigners into the bar, called Uptown, draws in a decent crowd of Chinese patrons that want to simply seem worldly and rub shoulders with foreigners that they can snap photos with to add to their WeChat stories. Nick's making a good point. A lot of Chinese cab drivers, at least in this city and province, don't always like to pick up foreigners. I've chatted with some before about why this is. It's kind of a headache to decipher what we're saying. Black cab drivers, on the other hand, love us. They assume we don't have a fucking clue what they're doing and that they can rip us off to their heart's content. It's already been 15 minutes of standing here in the cold rain, trying to flag down any cab that will take us, and it is fucking cold. Where we live, it seldom gets below freezing in the winter, and ostensibly, that's warmer than where Nick and I come from. The problem is that Boston or Detroit have central heating. This concept was withheld from the people of southern China for reasons I can't even get into. The takeaway, though, is that though it hovers just above freezing in the winter, you never actually get warm, and I find myself homesick for a blizzard-covered house. At least the snow insulates things. Dude, here's one. Let's just get in. I agree with Nick, and we hop into the little black, literally, not just figuratively, cab. The driver doesn't even seem to notice us at first, as he's just checking his mirrors for traffic coming up on his blind side. He turns his gaze to the rearview mirror and sees Nick, the handsome foreigner, and very manly, in Chinese terms, and sees that he slid into the back seat. Oh, here it comes. Oh shit, you're a foreigner. It's I that responds, yep, and you're Chinese. Can we go? If seeing Nick, 6 foot tall with a big dimple in his chin, blue eyes, and an aquiline nose was disconcerting to this little old man, realizing that a giant ginger 6'2" with a beard his Viking ancestors would have envied had appeared in his passenger seat was downright shocking. Oh, fuck, he exclaimed as his gaze ran up and down over me. These cars generally don't fit my frame, and more than once a friend has been in stitches watching me get into or out of one of them. Oh, fuck indeed. Drive, my lord? Okay, my lord isn't the best translation of the Chinese language title of Shifu, but it's technically correct, and I like it. Besides, I'm the one telling the story. So the guy pulls slowly away from the curb, still relatively shocked but coping with his new reality pretty well. This is when I begin to suspect something is a little bit off. He continues, slowly but surely, at about 15 kilometers per hour down our service streets next to the highway until he can turn off into a neighborhood. Looks like we're taking the scenic route through the streetwalker territory. Don't ask how I know it's streetwalker territory. Suffices to say, it is. Why is he coming so slow? Comes the angry query from Nick in the back seat. Dude, I don't know. Do I look like the black cab whisperer? I just want to fucking get there. We're already late and I need a fucking drink. To be fair, we've been in this town for about 6 months, and there are very few nights that Nick doesn't need one. Shit, I've been sober at this point for 5.5 years and catch myself thinking that I need one more often than I'm comfortable with these days. Shifu, can you drive a little bit faster? Oh, sure. Say, where do you want to go? Touche, Shifu. I hadn't actually said where we were going. Point, Chinese black taxi driver. We're going to a bar on West Chainling Road at the intersection of Shi Mountain Road. Fucking nailed it. Pronunciation was perfect. I've been practicing directions in my class with my tutor, and I'm so proud of myself right now. Fucking where? God damn it. He's staring at me with wide, watery eyes, completely perplexed. Maybe my tones were off. I say it again, and again, and one more time for good measure, changing the tones on each word in sort of a throw it at the wall and see if it sticks manner. Hey, works for pasta. And after all, this is where the Italians stole pasta from. The only way to convey how this might sound to a native speaker of Chinese in English would be as follows. I want to go to Chenling Road West. I want to go to Chenling Road West. I want to die. Why did I move here? At some point, I must have come close enough to it because he responds with, aha, right in my face. That's when the smell of the baijiu hits me, full force. He slows the car to a crawl, and he pulls over to the curb. Confused, I ask what he's doing, and he reaches into his coat and pulls out a flask. Wait, is that a fucking flask? I hear from the backseat. Yes, I believe it is. This dude is fucking lit, I respond. The driver takes a pull from the flask and then, courteously as can be, offers one to me. I respectfully decline, but the man currently operating the motor vehicle continues to drink. He also offers it to Nick, who does the same. The driver replaces the flask and pulls out a pack of cigarettes. He offers one to me. This I accept, as does Nick. It's only polite after all. He asks our names and where we're from as he flicks his Bic and lights both of our cigarettes first. This is a courteous action in this culture. Now, it's rude to let somebody else light your cigarette without also holding up your hand as if to block the wind. Once it's lit, you generally tap the back of their hand so that they let the flame die. To just stick your face out with a cigarette in your lips is presumptuous, and to just put a hand out for the lighter denies the other man the chance to show hospitality by lighting your cigarette for you. That's why Nick had to lean forward into the front seat and could smell the alcohol in the man's breath for himself. Jesus Christ, he smells like a distillery, he laughed. The theater of the absurd that our lives have turned into makes us both laugh, and Nick settles back into his seat. He's no longer upset that we're late. Quite frankly, neither am I. This shit is getting interesting. The driver packs away his cigarettes and flask and finally returns his attention to the road. You know, the thing that he's driving on. Forgetting that he never placed the car in park, he tries to slip into gear and stalls out. This gets even more laughter from Nick and I. And the driver's a bit confused, but then he just merrily joins in. Here we all sit, in a tiny Chinese car, on a side street of a shady neighborhood, laughing like lunatics, as our driver drunkenly tries to get the car started so we can be delivered to our destination. I'm probably going to die tonight. The driver finally figures out the whole driving thing again, and we start our journey over to West Chenling Road. So, you're foreign, but where are you from? America? That's right. We're Americans. And what are you doing here? Vacation? No, we work here. We're English teachers, Nick replies. Oh, wow, your Chinese is so good. You're so manly, he exclaims. And you're very strong. I could tell by looking. He glances at me again, smiling. It's not until later that I'm going to find out that when some Chinese people look at me and say how strong I must be, they're actually calling me fat. And that's pretty fair. For now, though, I'm content. He asks our names, cities of origin, details of our lives. It's all pretty typical small talk. He's still going only about 15 kilometers an hour. Finally, Nick realizes that we aren't going the right way and tells him. The guy stops and tries to get his bearings in the city. A popular song comes on the radio called My Little Apple, and Nick starts humming the tune. This jolts the little old man. I can't even begin to guess his age because of such excessive alcohol and tobacco use, which is clearly an issue for this guy. But the guy gets really excited and he insists that we sing along together. Now, mind you, he still isn't figuring out which way he's going in the car. We're just stopped again. He cranks the music up, and I hope he doesn't realize that we only know the chorus and barely even that much. He stops this whole time to really focus on the singing. After a lot of confusion, 3 more stops to light more cigarettes, and a few more pulls from the flasks, we make it to our destination. We could have walked over here in 30 minutes, and yet we're arriving 45 minutes after we left. As we get out of the car, I ask him how much the ride's going to be. What do you mean? I mean, how much money do you want for the ride? What money? What are you talking about? This isn't my car, it's my daughter's. Shifu, I need to pay you for the taxi ride. Normally a black cab ride over here would be about 15 RMB from my house. Now, I haven't been drinking, but trying to have a conversation with this guy at this point makes me feel like I have. But my foreign friend, I'm not a taxi driver, he exclaims. Fucking what? Nick and I scream this almost in perfect unison. I just saw you on the street and thought you might need a ride. Now we're friends. Now I have foreign friends. I can't wait to tell my family. Nick doubles over with laughter next to the car as the realization dawns over us that we didn't hail a black taxi, but we just got into a car, not with a taxi driver looking to make some extra money as a side hustle, but with a drunk old man that absconded with his daughter's car and went for a late night booze cruise. No wonder he was so confused and excited by the whole thing. He's managed to sneak out and go for a joyride, and in the meantime met probably 2 of the first foreigners he's ever encountered in his entire life. He drank with them, he smoked with them, and now he's leaving us on the curb outside of a Western bar. His mahjong buddies in the park tomorrow won't fucking believe this. And neither will our friends once we get into Uptown and tell them. So, as I've said before, the stories are all true. This stuff actually happened. This is one of my favorite ones to tell in person because I get to set it up by saying, did I ever tell you about the time that I hitched a ride with a guy that got drunk and stole his daughter's car and went on a booze cruise? It's a thing. It happened. This is my real life. Hope you enjoyed this story. Like I said, you can go check out the actual text version of it on theredistbeard.com. Hope you've enjoyed this little mini series of audio versions of my written work. Next week, this guy Nick that I've talked about a couple different times, starting a 2-part series with him where we talk about what it's like to live life as an expat abroad. Then, we're going to have episode 10, which is the season finale. I hope you've enjoyed so far. I hope to continue getting your support. I appreciate all of you. Keep in mind, you can subscribe through anchor.fm and help me to produce this podcast, or you can share it around with your friends, like the Facebook page, like the Instagram page. Get it out there because every play that I get gets me paid from my sponsor. I appreciate all the support, and I'll catch you guys next week. This has been Tales from the Reddest Beard.